All right, folks, this is Scott with the Game Audio Institute, and we are entering into another new Unreal-based adventure. And yeah, the last one that I did where I was trying to get my Constellation app to work in with MetaSounds was unfortunately not very successful. And I did mention that this well in advance, that this could end up being a complete dead end, and we just have to go and start over again. I will probably be doing something on Constellation pretty soon. Some very good news kind of came up from that situation, so there might be very well some very cool advances in that. But I started thinking about diving back into Unreal, mainly because of the situation from a job hunting perspective. If you wanted to get gigs or contract work or whatever, knowing Unreal is definitely going to be a really important thing because it's getting to be basically the AAA engine of choice. It's very resource heavy and a lot of other kinds of things, but it's also a really excellent engine and it does its own things pretty well. And I started thinking about, okay, so, the Constellation requirements were obviously too much. There was too much going on here, but I was thinking to myself, maybe there could be something else I could do that would be kind of simplistic in many respects, but it would actually result in some pretty interesting noise making. If you know any of my other stuff, the experimental channel that I have, Metaphysician 67, I do a lot of experimental music and totally not, tonal, like sound sculpture, things like that. And I've been making live performance instruments and things like that. So essentially, this is sort of in that vein. So basically, what I want to show you is this in this particular case there's a device. This was originally sort of based on, like, if you know anything about circuit bending and things like that. Circuit bending is kind of like where this kind of comes from a little bit. It's basically people making their own sort of noise making devices of different kinds. And there's a guy named Rob Hordijk. He has passed away, unfortunately, at this point in time, but he was around and actually created something called the Blipoo box. And then after that, he created something called the Benjolin. The thing that I liked about both of his designs is that he gets a lot of mileage out of a very small number of controls. A lot of times when you see virtual synthesizers, they have like 40 knobs and 60 sliders and, a bunch of other stuff like that. And that's all great and wonderful, but I'm looking for something that has a much more compact sort of kind of flavor to it and can also create a wide variety of different sounds. So what I'm talking about is an instrument that he made called the Benjolin specifically. Now, the Benjolin is at its heart not terribly complex, but it's kind of interesting in terms of how it cross-modulates. So it's actually only two LFOs and a filter. And so basically there's two low-frequency oscillators and a filter. So what has happened is that the idea is that one of the LFOs modulates the other LFO, and it can be at like very low rates or it can be at high rates. But what's interesting is that there's a shift register kind of thing that basically converts the analog waveform into little sort of stair steps, which kind of can create things like sequences, but also randomness and different kinds. And the filter can self-resonate very easily, or pretty easily generally. And so as a result, you get quite a wide variety of different kinds of sounds. It can be completely crazy and chaotic. I mean, basically the deal is that the oscillators that he's trying to create, that Rob was trying to create, and again, this was in hardware. It was an actual hardware kit that you could make, and a number of these were made. You would be able to make all these kinds of sounds with just twiddling these knobs. And I started thinking about this, and I thought, wouldn't this be an interesting instrument, first of all, to try to make inside MetaSounds, because it's not as heavy, doesn't require tons of polyphony or anything like the Constellation project did. And also, I could actually see it happening in VR. So I could maybe do some things where, I could use the controls to do some cool things and stuff like that. Now, I probably won't be showing a VR version of this anytime soon. And I have been doing some preliminary stuff And yeah, it's hard for me to get my handle around Unreal and blueprints. I have to say, it's still a bit of a heavy lift for me conceptually, just to get the concept of how everything flows correctly or doesn't flow, for me, honestly. But anyway, the idea though is that I'll probably show you in the next video what's going on, but this will be a new series in which we will be dealing with MetaSounds in Unreal, and also a little bit of Unreal blueprints as well, in order to be able to set up a relatively simple interface where you can control this Benjolin. It's going to be an Unreal Benjolin attempt, essentially. So, and again, this one might fail just as much as the Constellation one might. So, you know, just join me for the journey, and we'll see you in the next ones coming up. Take care.